And we're live. There we are. Excuse us for the few minutes of delay, but we had a great conversation before going live here. And yeah, it's a big week in crypto. Obviously, primarily because that's the last week before Cosmoverse. But then there's also another event happening this week, which is the Ethereum merge. But of course, that's just secondary for us here. But yeah, that's a big event, obviously. And I think today's conversation maybe deals a lot also around basic assumptions on proof of work and how it works, the pros and cons of it, especially in Bitcoin, which is not moving to proof of stake, but Ethereum is. So yeah, and the main goal of this session today is to learn a little bit about how Bitcoin security could be beneficial for Cosmos chains. So we have David here, who is a Stanford professor and also the co-founder of Babylon Chain, and Zaki, who is my co-host of Cryptocito, Stakecito. So yeah, first of all, David, it's an honor to have you on. How are you doing? How is everything going?
Hey, great. Hey, thanks, Cryptocito, for having me here to introduce us to the Cosmos ecosystem. Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think we're always happy when new chains are entering Cosmos, and especially in the last weeks. I mean, I personally lost sight of all the demand and chains that are either migrating or that are, starting from scratch on Cosmos. Saki, how is your impression of that? You must be.
I've been telling people that basically for whatever reason, it was like Terra collapsed, and then like 2 weeks later, and then I haven't been able to catch my breath ever since. Like it's just phone call. Like I don't know. I'm doing like I'm in Berlin, and I'm doing like 2 hours of phone calls, or like 5 hours of phone calls and 2 podcasts tonight. Like it's just like the demand is insane.
Saki is hustling, but yeah, it's a good time. It's a good time to be in Cosmos. I also see like a lot of demand. Obviously, as you know, we're organizing Cosmoverse. We get so many requests from VCs, big companies, private investors, new startups, existing companies that want to explore Cosmos, students, universities, like all across the board, like every institution, even some public institutions. They're very interested to learn about this Web3 thing and also to learn more precisely about Cosmos. So yeah, I think this content helps. But I think before we get into how Babylon Chain leverages Bitcoin security for Cosmos chains, I want to hear your story, how you guys met. I think you met a while ago, and also a bit of context on David, since the cosmonauts don't know you yet. So you can share a little bit about your journey, your background, and your excitement about Cosmos and crypto and Web3 in general.
Yeah, I mean, I'll let David go first. I feel like people should get at least, I don't know if we have time to do the full history. I don't know if I'm allowed to show other people's podcasts, but Anna and Guillermo did a great job of like doing the whole David biography on $0 podcast. It was like really, really good. Actually, we should do a short version of that, David.
No, I will share the link with this actually in the chat.
I mean, yeah, like David's career is so epic that like it's.
And exactly, just for the record, you're allowed to say or share or shill anything, whatever you want. This is your channel. This is your channel.
Yeah, Anna's a friend of Cosmos, so we gotta give the shout outs.
I will dig out the link and share it in the chat, and then in the meantime, David, you can maybe share what Zaki says about your epic journey, your epic career.
Yeah, I mean, epic is kind of an overstatement, but thanks anyway, Zaki, for shilling everything today. Yeah, so I started in a totally different field. I'm an information theorist. So that came from a person, 1948, Claude Shannon, who invented this idea of how to sort of quantify information and optimally communicate. So the entire communication infrastructure in this world, which we're using right now, is actually, whoa. Am I still here?
Yeah, we can hear. Yeah.
Whoa, I don't know where I went to. Hold on 1 second here.
We can still hear and see you.
Somehow I disappeared from my browser. Okay. All right. So yeah, so communication was my starting point, how to communicate, and that changed the world. And so I've been doing a lot of basic research and also technological transfer into 3rd generation, 4th generation, 5th generation cellular. But then I got a bit tired of it after doing this for a decade. And besides, everybody has a cell phone. We went from 1 million people to 3 or 4, 5 billion people having cell phones. So when so many people are having cell phones, then obviously the innovation, the opportunity is reduced from an infrastructure point of view. So I was looking for a new area to do infrastructure research, infrastructure innovation. And 4 years ago, I found blockchain kind of randomly. And I've been working on that ever since. I developed created a lab at Stanford doing mostly blockchain layer 1 consensus protocol research. And in this journey, it was exciting because we start with basic research, asking basic problems, but then we got into contact with exciting groups like Ethereum Foundation. Turns out that we found that their protocol, Gaspa, since we talk about merge today, Gaspa is the beacon chain protocol. Turns out to be not secure. We found 2 years ago. We found some attacks on that protocol. And then we start working with them to improve the protocol and try to propose some new protocols. And so, yes, it's the merge, but I would say Ethereum protocols are still, security-wise, is still work in progress. So we're still working on that. Yeah. And so that's how I got into this blockchain space. So Zaki, do you want to say a few words about how we meet, or what's the, or where?
Yeah, so I guess there's a couple of things, right? Is like, so, you know, I've been part of this like protocol research community since, you know, 2014, 2015. And, you know, always kind of closely connected to academia, closely connected to Stanford, helped get Stanford Blockchain Conference and the Stanford Blockchain Research Center off the ground. And so, but like, I always kept my eyes open for like people who were writing papers around things that you know, both like intuitions that I had about like where there would be problems. And so, you know, I had all of these intuitions about like, okay, I think that, you know, Grasper, like the hybridization of the longest chain protocol and the finality protocol, like putting those things together was going to be like have a lot of security challenges. I was always like a bit skeptical of that approach, and like how difficult it would be. And I thought, you know, it was tricky. So, you know, when David's papers started coming out about this, I was like, oh, like someone is writing about like exactly like what I am worried about with Ethereum proof of stake. And so it's always good when people like validate your biases. You know, and also, you know, in a bunch of places, David was always a big fan of Tendermint and, you know, having like an actually formally verified proof of stake protocol. So all of that, you know, warmed my heart. And but this kind of idea of that, like you could somehow combine Tendermint with Bitcoin and get properties that were better than Tendermint alone, has been like a thing that like Ethan Buckman and I think we've been talking about this like easily since 2015, right? But like, you know, it takes a mind of like David and his students' caliber to like turn all these vague intuitions into like a concrete protocol. And so it has been really, it's been a real pleasure. Like, I don't remember when it is exactly when we first met, but it's been like, I don't know, probably almost a year at this point.
Yeah,
it's been really pleasant working all this stuff with you guys.
Yeah, it's been great.
And then Zaki, did you Cosmos pill David when you met him, or how did you?
He was already Cosmos pilled. I did not have to Cosmos pill him. Like, this is the you know, this was the thing that was very excited. I like about this specific project. I think Andrew Miller reached out to me and was like, hey, why don't you come in and talk to David about this? Had no idea what I was walking into. Immediately like was like, oh, you know, like, this is cool. I've been thinking about this, haven't like revisited all of these ideas in a long time. And it's like, it's interesting. It's like, you know, just like it's been really fun for me, like seeing the dialogue about Babylon Chain sort of start out at Babylon Chain, when I immediately shared David's ideas with Ethan and Dave from Osmosis. I was like, hey, like, I think this stuff could be really like important, I guess is the right word for Cosmos. I think Babylon Chain is like probably like one of the most fundamental chains that is like being worked on. Like it's working on like the big ideas, like an idea that's like as big as like Tendermint and IBC, rather than, you know, oh, we've just built another application specific blockchain that like does a thing. We're like really trying to figure out, you know, like this idea of solving weak subjectivity with the unbonding period was like Jaquan's, like one of Jaquan's like big like sort of brain tornadoes of back in 2015, 2016, that like we had this solution, but like this idea that we could like completely change how unbonding works, which is, you know, everybody who uses Cosmos, like, you know, you like, this is our flagship thing, right? Is like proof of stake, unbonding, slashing. These are our flagship concepts, and we are like, you know, with Babylon Chain, we're like really going at those like those core ideas and revisiting those core ideas and asking, like, can they be different? Can they be better?
Yeah, and for all the 60 people that are listening and watching right now, share this link with fellow cosmonauts, with all your friends, social media, Telegram, Twitter. Make sure everybody is seeing this, because as you can tell already from the first 10 minutes, this is fundamental and very educational content that I think is very helpful for a lot. And Zaki, like you said, I think the cool thing about Cosmos, and this is how I got into it, is it's not very flashy, but it has a very organic reach. It has a very organic audience that just finds it. And, you know, like David or like myself, I just came out of, you know, nowhere, and just Jack was very open, and I talked to him, and here I am. I think because, you know, we've seen these conversations on Twitter also, that Cosmos lacks marketing, but you can tell like these things are happening, and real builders will find Cosmos and you know, get Cosmos built organically. So I love to see that. But yeah, let's talk a little bit more about specifically the problem, and also how Babylon Chain is resolving it, and how it differentiates also to others that are out there. I've seen a lot on Twitter also people saying, hey, isn't that what Nomic is doing already? So maybe later we can also differentiate the two. But first of all, David, what was the thing that kind of like got you really hooked to focus your research on Bitcoin security, and how to potentially leverage that to other chains? And what is the big challenge here? Maybe we can start there.
Yeah, I think, you know, the thing is that Bitcoin is kind of a very expensive resource, right? We're spending huge amount of energy on this resource. But all it's doing is confirming 6 transactions or 8 transactions per minute. Per minute or per second? Per second, right?
Yeah.
So it's really a kind of a waste in some sense of this resource that the humankind is spending. So I think the first idea is to sort of leverage off this resource in a positive way for the entire blockchain ecosystem, as opposed to just for Bitcoin. And so that's what started us thinking about sort of using this Bitcoin. And then at the same time, since we have done a lot of work on proof of stake protocol, in particular the collaboration with Ethereum, we realized that there are many attack vectors in proof of stake protocols that are not in proof of work protocol. And so therefore the natural idea is really how to combine the best of both worlds using not a new proof of work protocol, but an existing proof of work chain, Bitcoin, and use that to supplement or increase the security and remove these attack vectors for proof of stake protocol. And actually this idea of combining 2 protocols together is actually not new, in the sense that even if you look at Ethereum proof of stake protocol, it has already this idea of having a Nakamoto consensus protocol running below, together with a finality gadget on top. So in some sense, what we're doing here is we're kind of flipping. So Bitcoin is on top, and proof of stake protocol is below. So in some sense, it's like a duo. If I may get a little bit nerdy here, mathematically nerdy, it's like the duo of sort of the Ethereum kind of construction. And so it felt kind of very natural to us to, given our background, to sort of push that forward, to figure out how to design a protocol that is secure. So I would like to add one point as to why sort of we got attracted to the Cosmos ecosystem and built on a little bit on what Zaki said about Tendermint. Is that one thing we really like about Tendermint is, it's not flashy. Some people even think it's like old technology, but we really like it. And one reason we like it is because it's a very well-designed with a proper security proof analysis protocol. So it's like something very solid that you can build on. While, many other protocols, I should not name names at this point, do not have any security proofs. And for example, people think, hey, some people ask me on Twitter, actually, in the past 2 days, they say, hey, why is Cosmos having a bonding period of 21 days, whereas some other chain, I think it was mentioned was, maybe I should not mention names, only 1 day or 1 minute, or maybe, I don't know, 1 day unbonding or a few hours of unbonding. What's with those? Well, the thing is that they have not thought through the consequence of long-range attack, of posterior attack. And the reason is because that is fundamental to proof of stake. So in our recent paper, we showed that actually no proof of stake protocol can overcome this issue. The 21 days that Cosmos designed is it's kind of an honest recognition of this fact. And Ethereum also follows the same philosophy. They also have a very long unbonding period of the order of 2 or 3 weeks. And so these are serious projects, I think. So that's why we want to build on such serious projects.
Can you maybe define what long-range attacks are and what the severe consequences could be that other projects that have very short unbonding periods have not thought in the long term?
Yeah. So unbonding, this long-range attack is really coming from the fact one fundamental difference between proof of work and proof of stake. Proof of work, to build any block, any new block, you have to do more work. Mm-hmm. It's just the physical nature of the game, right? Any new block you build, you have to do more work. In proof of stake, as a coin can actually be used multiple times without any extra. So there's a fundamental sort of difference between stake and work. And a lot of the careful design of proof of stake protocol is really to try to mitigate this difference. But there are some differences that are not mitigatable. And one example is that when you unbond a stake, once you unbond it, you can use that stake again to rebuild another block, a parallel block, to attempt a double spend. And in proof of stake protocol, the strongest security guarantee is so-called slashing. Mm-hmm. And in fact, the whole Tendermint is actually designed around slashing, I believe. How the crypto economic penalty. But once you unbond, you cannot slash anymore. And so thereby, that's the biggest problem. If you do fast unbonding, you let the guy leave the system, and then he try to build another chain using the same coin, nothing a stake attack, you can't slash them. And so the 21 days is really to make sure that the community around the chain, off-chain, sort of come to an agreement on what is the correct chain, so that any new chain built afterwards will be rejected by the community. So that's where the softness.
Can I tell a story
about
this? Okay, so I'm going to tell a little bit of a story about, a little bit about the difference between how proof of stake people, proof of work people think about the world, right? So proof of work people, like their sort of mental model of who should be able to use the system safely, right? Is there's a guy and he's sitting in a cave. He has like a diesel generator. He's got a shortwave radio. He has all of his money in Bitcoin. Like he has his Raspberry Pi. Okay. And, he wants to make sure that like his money is safe. Right. And so, and the idea is, sometimes the power will go out. There'll be a lightning storm. Like he'll get disconnected from the network. He won't be able to get new blocks. Right. And so the idea of Bitcoin is basically this idea of there's no such thing as subjectivity, which is you can start your Bitcoin node and it will sync from the first block to the current head of the network. And other than the fact that, you know, you just have the correct Bitcoin software and you have the right Genesis block, you don't need to know anything else, right? As long as you can reach other peers, as long as you can get the blocks, you can like verify the whole system, right? There's this trade-off though when you get to proof of stake, which is the man in the cave model doesn't work anymore, right? Like if you go offline for longer than the unbonding period, you can like, you know, stake will change hands, you come back online, you're like, oh, like my last block that I knew about, everyone who was a validator could have changed, all the validators could have changed on the current blockchain. And then those validators could have sold their keys and said, hey, like I'll just like publish my key on the internet, right? Like I'm done. I'm out. I've done published my keys on the internet, unbonded all my coins, like it's all gone. And you can just go and say, and then anyone on the internet to this man on the cave, just be like, man in the cave, like I've made a new blockchain, like, you know, this is where all the money is. And you know, you can trick the man on the cave. Well, when we built IBC, we sort of built an on-chain version of the man on the cave, because the IBC software client that's running on the blockchain doesn't know anything. It doesn't, you know, it can't go look at MintScan. It can't look at CoinGecko. It can't check Binance. It doesn't know anything other than the like consensus proofs. And so this is where this, like, you know, it's happened in Cosmos, right? That like a chain halts, the light clients expire. We have to have a governance vote to turn the IBC channel back on. Like, why does all of this happen? It's because we took all of this weak subjectivity very seriously, and we were like, well, if your chain halts and you can't send an update of what your validator set for longer than 2 weeks, you know, the IBC channel gets disconnected. You have to, you know, and like the connection halts, and all of this stuff is like built into the security of IBC. So it's just like, you know, so you have this metaphor of the man in the cave, the Bitcoiners, like the people who work on Bitcoin consensus. This is the thing that they want to preserve. I don't know, but like we've actually made all of this stuff very practical. Like this is fundamental to the way IBC works.
Really appreciate the analogy and the example. One big thing that a lot of people complain about that are not the biggest Bitcoin fans is obviously the energy consumption. You pointed out in the beginning, David. So what would be your counter argument to those that would say, hey, we don't want to, you know, for Cosmos chains to contribute or even increase the pollution or the energy consumption by leveraging the security of Bitcoin? Is that even a correct argument to make? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we did a very quick calculation, and the calculation suggests that our technology, Babylon, that we're using to secure the Cosmos zones will contribute roughly 1/600,000 of the energy usage of Bitcoin. So how do I come to that number? People tell me that I should, you know, give you a number first and then explain it. So we basically, the idea here is to try to minimize our footprint onto Bitcoin. We are using cryptographic techniques to minimize the commitments, should I say, the information that we have to put on Bitcoin in order to provide the security. And that information is basically roughly 0.01% of all the transactions on Bitcoin. So Bitcoin already has a very low transaction rate. We only have 0.01%. And so this little added traffic is roughly contributing 1/600,000 of the energy usage.
So negligible, basically.
Yeah, because right now the transaction fees that we're paying on these information is about 10,000, whereas Bitcoin miners is getting 6.5 billion worth of Bitcoins every year based on block rewards. So this is a very, very small addition.
And this is based on whether this would be pegged to all Cosmos chains that are currently existing, or predominantly the Cosmos Hub, or?
Yeah, the fees that we are paying from, so the architecture is that we use Babylon to make commitments to Bitcoin to get the security, and then we distribute the security from Babylon through IBC to other Cosmos zones. Now, so therefore, no matter how many Cosmos zones uses Babylon, the amount of commitment we put on Bitcoin remains the same. So it's at the current fees, around $10,000 per year. So the fees is independent of the Cosmos zones. So that's the current economics right now for our.
So that would also not significantly increase the transaction fees for the zone that is secured additionally through Bitcoin. Because that's also a question I got. Like
yes. So if you think about economically from a cost basis point of view, our cost basis is $10,000 per year. So and then the checkpoints that other zones put onto Babylon will be sharing that cost. And so from a per transaction point of view, it's just very, very low.
So it would not exponentially increase with more chains pegging to it?
No.
Okay. And can you explain maybe a little bit, because there's also this concept, obviously, of merge mining, and I think there's different versions of it. Also, Dogecoin, as far as I know, they implement merge mining with Litecoin, if I'm not mistaken. What are some of the concepts here? How does it differentiate to what you guys are doing? And what are some of the trade-offs?
Yeah, in fact, Zaki and I and the team has a lot of discussion about merge mining versus this technology we use called checkpointing onto Bitcoin. So there are basically two ways. If you look at the past projects, there have been two ways of using the security of a so-called parent chain, in this example, Bitcoin. One way is to have the miners simultaneously mine Bitcoin and another chain. Okay. Now that method has one big drawback, is that the miner can actually go and attack Babylon. So suppose it's merge mine Babylon with Bitcoin. The miners can actually attack Babylon without attacking Bitcoin. So therefore, the security is not Bitcoin security. The security only is so much so that the miners that are mining Babylon should be faithful to Babylon. So we're not really transferring security. Whereas directly checkpointing on Bitcoin really means that to attack Babylon, you have to fork Bitcoin itself, the chain. So that is a very big difference. And to tell the truth, this is a pretty complicated issue. It took us a while to sort of understand this. I remember it was in one of the meetings with Zaki that we sort of came to a full realization that, hey, wait a minute, there's several merge mining projects, but really they're not really getting Bitcoin security. And maybe that's one reason why it's kind of hard for merge mining projects to take off. There has not been really a very successful merge mining project. I think if Zaki agrees or not, I don't know. But
yeah, I mean, you get this. It's this sort of with merge mining. It is this all or nothing thing. We talked a lot about developing Babylon chain as a merge mine chain, and there are definitely a lot of potential advantages. It would be a lot more work to interoperate with IBC in that circumstance, but also merge mining is kind of all or nothing from a security point of view. It's like either you get 51% of Bitcoin mining hash power, merge mining your chain, and you have security, or you basically have nothing.
Yeah, I think that's the other point, which is that if you use checkpointing, then Babylon can be built as a Cosmos zone itself. Whereas if we do merge mining, then Babylon is a proof of work chain, and interoperability with Cosmos zone will be rather difficult. Right now, because Babylon itself is a Cosmos zone, we do the hard work interacting with Bitcoin. But in terms of the communication with other Cosmos zone, it's through, we can utilize this very important infrastructure of IBC. So we're basically using IBC not to do token transfer, asset transfer, but really security transfer. And I think that's an interesting use case of IBC. Because at the end of the day, IBC is message passing. Message passing, you can use it for many things. And we're using it for sort of this checkpointing mechanism to transfer security.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like every day, I think there's still, I think everybody on this podcast, on this live stream knows that IBC is so much more than just a message token transfer protocol. We have interchain security. We have interchain accounts. We can send consensus message, slashing messages, checkpointing security messages. Like there's, the composability of IBC is quite extraordinary. And we are just starting to sort of like deliver that composability. But like, hats off to Chris Goes and the IBC team for giving us all of these building blocks that can be used in all of these ways that, like, new ideas seem to be, as more people become deeply familiar with the protocol, more and more new ideas about like what we can do on IBC. Like, I just, I haven't even, like, I don't think I've even fully understand like all of the different ways in which security can be composed with IBC.
Ghazni, who is a very active cosmonaut and also helped, by the way, to set up this interview. He also provided me with some context and information. A very, very smart and nice guy. Big shout out to you. He also tweeted this, and he also told me that I should definitely ask you this, is whether or not, or to which degree, liquid staking would change that or would affect that, the potential of suffering long-range attacks or any of that. Is liquid staking changing any of what we just talked?
I can probably speak to that as the liquid staking guy. So it is a sort of interesting trade-off. The trade-offs are subtle, right? So one benefit of liquid staking is this idea of the one benefit of liquid staking is this idea of, oh, you don't have to wait the unbonding period to like trade your coins, sell your coins, etc. Right? And that, that many people get excited about that. But in some ways, there's some overlap with Babylon Chain, which Babylon Chain gives you this capacity to reduce the unbonding periods. You don't have to wait as long. As with most things that we'll probably talk about as competitive in this podcast, they're not. The real exciting thing about liquid staking is that it actually lets you reduce the amount of inflation of token issuance that has to be paid out to stakers, because people can now take their stake and use their tokens for all kinds of other things, not just having to just sit there and stake it. And it creates this much more healthy economy around the asset, which is going to be a big part of Atom 2.0. Continuing to drop the Atom 2.0 alpha. We're not that far from Cosmoverse, and everybody gets to see what we've been proposing to the Cosmos Web community about like what all of this enables. But I think the world in which unbonding periods are shorter, IBC is more secure, is very complementary to the world of we have liquid staking.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, and talk a little bit, maybe David, about the architecture. You already said Babylon Chain will be its own sovereign zone, I guess. Are you planning on, I don't know, using some sort of shared security model? Are you going to be your fully owned chain? And how would the onboarding go for other zones in Cosmos to use the checkpointing through Babylon Chain? Would that go through on-chain governance, or how would that process be?
Yeah, so Babylon itself is a zone, so Cosmos chain. It is secure. So first of all, to provide security to other zones itself should be secure. So it is secured by Bitcoin through this checkpointing technology. And we figure out sort of so I should emphasize that checkpointing is kind of like the plumbing. But really the value is how do you use the checkpoint or the timestamp information. And sort of a lot of our research has been gone on to find protocols that provide full guarantee in terms of slashing. So we want to make sure that all attack vectors can be slashed, and that's what our protocol provided. So that's number one. We secure Babylon. Now, if other zones wants to use Babylon and to get Bitcoin security, we want to make it easiest for them. Okay, and the one easiest thing for them to do is basically to use IBC. So they would open up an IBC channel to Babylon, and then it would check this IBC channel. Actually, there's been some discussion. But what we realized when we start thinking about this problem is that the IBC channel itself is already a checkpointing mechanism. So we're just utilizing this infrastructure, provide a checkpoint onto Babylon. And the checkpoint Babylon will go through the checkpoint from Babylon to Bitcoin to get a timestamp on Bitcoin. And then there will be some mechanism by which the consumer zone will read this information, this timestamp information, and it helps with applications like fast unbonding. So we envision that it should be quite easy for consumer zone to use the service with very minimal change, particularly with opening this IBC channel. So we're quite, so we're still finalizing the design. So right now, our project, we have almost finished building the Babylon zone. We'll do a demo on that at Cosmoverse. So thank you very much for Cosmoverse, because that gives a deadline for all of us to work hard. So we'll demo Babylon as the first chain that uses the service. And in terms of the design of how to sort of the consumer zones to interact with Babylon, we have a design which we are finalizing, and that will be the next stage of our building.
That's awesome. Yeah, really cool. And I see also a lot of questions right now in the chat about nomic and all these kind of things. We'll get to this in a second. But there has also been some questions regarding the product market fit of that idea, right? And Chango also commented on my tweet that I made. She's saying that I don't think there will be a product market fit for it because every layer one wants to be the settlement layer, and checkpointing to BTC doesn't offer the type of security gains users demand. Plus, there's an intermediary between Bitcoin and the source chains instead of directly checkpointing. What would be your kind of counter argument to that? I know you had a little bit of a Twitter discussion going on there. Very constructive, no drama. The drama times are over in Cosmos. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
Drama per second must always go up. Always. Up only.
No more DPS. No more DPS. But what is your assumptions on the product market fit? And obviously we heard about faster unbondings. Like what would be some of the tangible use cases for that?
So yeah, so we had some discussion on Twitter about these 2 points that was raised. So I guess my thinking was going to reverse in the sense that having Babylon as the intermediary chain is actually a good thing, because it allows individual zones to use the service very easily, using just IBC. Otherwise, each individual chain will have to worry about optimizing this checkpoint to Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is very fuzzy, right? You don't want to suddenly have a service where you dump many transactions onto Bitcoin. It will be rejected by miners will revoke. You don't want to do that. So we do the hard engineering work to optimize this, and we keep on innovating on this front while we provide an easy interface with other Cosmos zones. I thought it was a pretty good division of labor, and therefore I thought it was a pretty good product market fit. So that's my thinking on this issue. I don't know if Zaki wants to add or talk about that.
I would say so. I think that there are a couple of things that people are going to like realize is like, you know, like for instance, all the Babylon chain validators are going to need to run Bitcoin full nodes, right? It's going to be like one piece of this whole puzzle. There's also going to need to be, you know, so there's going to be like a very specific set of validation requirements. David maybe will tell me I'm wrong and they don't need to. So I won't go over specify the protocol, but I have been following the engineering, you know, on this protocol, sort of out of the corner of my eye as this has been going on. And there's quite a complex system that is being built here. It is not trivial for another chain to just pick this up and just say, oh, we're just checkpointing into Bitcoin. It's very easy. So I do think that there's a very valuable technical base that's being built here. I think also the set of products that it manifests itself into is going to be sort of evolving over time. So there is this like shorter unbonding product that, you know, teams can offer. There's There's going to be products related. There's this product of IBC security. There are potentially like you want to have like a specific transaction on any Cosmos chain that you want higher assurances that like around that transaction. That might be another product. I don't think that we've fully explored the product market space around what can be done with this technology platform. So this is like sort of like core to my thinking. And another piece is that like basically whenever you are settling, this is basically what the IBC security layer of Babylon chain means. It means that when you are settling from a Babylon secured chain to another chain via an IBC connection, you can think of IBC as settlement. If your IBC packet comes with a full set of Babylon chain proofs, there is a higher level of assurance and security around that than there is just from the standard IBC packets that we are exchanging today.
Yeah, I think that helps a lot to clarify some of the points and also the feedback that we got on Twitter. But yeah, David, we got also a lot of questions around Nomic. Not sure if you have done deep research on them. I think there's slightly a different pivot, also what they're doing and what you're trying to do. There's actually a comment from Jason right now. What kind of research you guys did on Nomic and what your thoughts are? Maybe you can differentiate the purpose and the goals here.
Yeah, so at a high level, in terms of goals, I think Nomic, a great project, bring Bitcoin asset into the Cosmos ecosystem. Our project is to bring Bitcoin security into the Cosmos ecosystem. So I think that's the main distinction here. As we said, IBC can be as a basic message passing device. It can be used to pass asset. It can be used to pass security. We're just focusing entirely our technology on the security part. And security is a tricky matter. So I think it's good to just have a project like us to focus on that. So I would think that's the biggest distinction. Now, of course, when you exchange assets, you're building a bridge. You could also have some security benefit. And I believe that the Nomic team has used that security benefit to do some checkpointing to provide security to itself. But our goal is not only to secure ourselves. Our goal is to secure the entire, as many Cosmos zones as we can, improve the use case.
I mean, and we can go beyond just, sorry to interrupt, but like I just think
no, go ahead.
Galaxy Brain is IBC is not just about Cosmos SDK chains. It's not just about Tendermint, right? We are starting to have IBC extend out into the Substrate ecosystem, into the Near ecosystem. So Babylon chain can act as a security sort of epicenter for the entire sort of like universe of proof of stake, right? Like every proof of stake chain that can connect to IBC, which means every proof of stake chain eventually.
Yeah, I thought you wanted to add something, but yeah, that's cool. Also, considering the time, we have a few more minutes left before we then wrap it up. I'm trying to embed as many questions as possible as I see in the chat, but maybe before we do some more questions, what is the current stage of the project? What is do you already have any testnet that's out there? What is the timeline and what is the intended rollout for the launch?
Yeah, so right now we are building, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we're building the Babylon zone itself, optimizing the checkpoint and the getting security from Bitcoin. So that we expect to finish by the end of September. We'll bring a demo to Cosmoverse, Colombia, Medellin, and show it to the community, get some valuable feedback. So then at the Cosmoverse, we're really hoping to talk to various teams to find some interesting partners to test it out with us, to use Babylon, because our goal is not to secure ourselves. That's not the end, it's the means. The end is to secure individual Cosmos zones. So we're really hoping to build some partnership at Cosmoverse and some follow-up conversations. And that will take us to a testnet. So the testnet hopefully is not Babylon by itself sitting here. It would be partnership with some chains, some zones to test out the whole concept at the testnet. That will be hopefully by the end of the year. And the mainnet launch will be after we do enough testnet. So that will be, we're looking at 2023. Yes, we don't have a specific date on that, but
yeah, it's always hard.
This end of year.
Always hard to give timelines and deadlines. But yeah, glad that Cosmos can also, be an event that you can share something. And I think a lot of projects will be there, a lot of builders. Basically, every team, every builder is coming to Cosmos, so you will have plenty of time and opportunities to meet all of them, to talk with them. You guys also have a booth stand throughout the 3 days of the conference, so there's a lot of opportunity also to just network there. But yeah, also final question from my side: what is the current team size? Is it predominantly from the blockchain lab that you guys are working on, or is that a separate team? Maybe you could talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, we have the research team is from part of my group at Stanford. So we have 3 to 4 people working on the research side. The engineering side, we built a team of 6 people, including our CTO, Fisher. Fisher Yu is in Australia. And the engineering team is distributed around the world, with a few in Europe, a few in Australia.
Awesome.
And so the size of the team is about 10 people right now.
That's awesome.
And yeah. And hey, since you asked, we are looking for new people to join the team. Particularly, we're quite interested in finding someone to help us with the Cosmos ecosystem, to build this project, to interact with all these teams. If anyone is interested, listening to Cryptocito's podcast, please say hi to us.
Sorry?
How should they reach out, David?
How should they reach out? Our Twitter handle. How about that? Is that good? Babylon_chain. Babylon_chain.
Yes.
Let me show that in the chat so people can follow. And also, I hope your DMs are open. I think they're open, even if you're not followed. But if not, follow them, drop a message, say, hey, I watched the Cito interview. I really like that. I want to learn more. I want to maybe even get involved. Or if you're coming to Cosmos, you have the chance to meet David and some of the team members also in person there. Or just text me. I mean, I can also forward that. So yeah, let's do some community questions. Or is there anything else final from your side that you want to mention? Zaki, David?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm really excited to go to Cosmoverse. So hopefully we'll meet all these teams there and have a good conversation.
Yeah, we only have 12 days left. It's insane, but it will be really big. So I'm excited. Okay, so let's do some questions to wrap things up. CryptoStream Live is asking whether Babylon will compete with Atom interchain security. So maybe Zaki or David. I think Zaki, you also addressed it already in Twitter.
Yeah,
right?
I addressed it on Twitter. I will try and explain a little bit better. So interchain security v1 brings you a validator set that has a lot of economic security behind it, right? But the economic security applies only basically within the unbonding period, right? So it is only within 1 day, 21 days, etc. Babylon chain is about securing the system beyond the unbonding period by providing like a stronger guarantee of consistency to the network. And so I view these as complementary systems. The interchain security is about taking what is staked and expanding the amount of software and expanding the number of functions that it can provide. Babylon chain is about protecting that entire system against long-range attacks, shortening the unbonding period.
Ghazni is asking, AlphaCito, ask about airdrop. So we haven't touched upon anything regarding a token or whatever on the Babylon chain. I guess it's also way too early to ask that.
Too early. Yes.
Okay. So, but any rough idea, like would it be a native token or?
Sorry?
Any rough idea, like where, or is it way too early to ask this now? Yeah,
I think I would refrain from publicly saying it's so early. Yes.
Fair point. Let me see. I'm just going through Twitter. A lot of questions that are regarding comparing it to ICS. I don't know. Is there any question, like frequently asked questions that you get that you want to address? In the meantime, I'm looking for further questions.
Yeah, there were some questions about why some projects have instant unbonding. We already answered that question. So, like, for example, I think there's some specific question here. Why Cardano or Algorand have instant unbonding? So they use a technique called key evolving signature, which means that as the validator proposes blocks, the signatures changes over time. And then they're supposed to forget about the old keys. So therefore, this long-range attack that we discussed earlier is not possible, because if you forgot your old keys, then you cannot use the old keys to attack the system. But as you can see, the incentive compatibility of this kind of method is kind of weak, because, why forget about the old keys when you can remember the old keys? So it's kind of very much depending on the trustworthiness, the honesty of the participants. Whereas the Cosmos ethos, I think, and also the Babylon bidding on top of that, is really to say that, hey, nobody's really honest. All we can do is to slash people, to give them penalty when bad things happen. So this is completely orthogonal, I think, to what Cosmos tries to do and what Babylon builds on top of that, slashability. So I think that's why instant unbonding is to say, hey, if you forget your old keys, then you cannot do long-range attack, then you can unbond immediately. But,
yeah, I mean, to be a little bit more elaborating on this, so Algorand has launched now for the first time trustless bridges between Algorand and other chains, like something similar to IBC. But now there's actually an incentive, given that those bridges exist, to actually pay people not to forget their keys. Because if you could pay people to not forget their keys and then send you their keys, eventually you could accumulate enough keys to trick the bridge and steal funds.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, thank you so much for clarifying all that. Very final question, David. People are asking about the name Babylon. Is there any specific reason for it, or why the name?
Yeah. So Babylon is a good name for us because one is the very first marketplace in the history of man's civilization. It's a city. And Babylon is kind of a infrastructure, a layer for security. So that's a marketplace for security. People come and get security from Babylon. Babylon is really a middle layer in mediating between Bitcoin and the other Cosmos zones, the other POS chains. So that's number one. Number two, Babylon has this very famous structure called a Tower of Babel. And if you think about it, what we're doing is really we're taking Bitcoin as the tower and use it to shine and give light to the rest of the world. Because this tower is always watching. You don't need people to be always online for 21 days. They can go offline, they can go on vacation for a few days, relax, come back, and it's still fine because Bitcoin is still watching and they can see whatever happened recorded on Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is the Tower of Babel in the crypto era.
There we go. Steve is saying he read the Bible, so there we go. Thanks for the explaining. It was really a good session today, very educational. Also, Zaki's analogy earlier, I think someone should meme that. So there we go. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys in 12 days, 11 days, something like that. Here in Medellin. Safe trip, everybody. Also, thanks for everybody dropping questions, engaging. If there's any follow-ups, follow Babylon Chain on Twitter, ask questions directly, and I'll see you guys soon. Cheers.
You guys.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.